Hola, ¿cómo están? Bienvenidos de nuevo. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. Including my enemies looking for something to use against me. Spaniards had most of what is now the USA before the Brits. Lewis and Clark were not really pioneers. Louisiana was Spanish once, not just French. The Spanish were in South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, and beyond before the British got there. There are places I'm not going to even cover because I don't have time to cover it all. Spain and Russia met in Northwest America. During the settling of America by Europeans, it was said that the Spaniards would first build a church, the Dutch would first build a fort, and the English a tavern. Spain helped the United States get its independence. France helped more, I think, but Spain did help. Bernardo de Galvez was the main agent, only for the US to blame it for the inside job on the Maine, which they made sure to rhyme with Spain for good propaganda. Now it is said that a Dutchman or Portuguese guy was the first European to find Australia. That's right, I'm coming after you, Australia. You Brits think it's yours? Regardless, the Spanish were there before the British. Watch. First, some context. The first sighting by Europeans was by the Spanish expedition of Luis Valles de Torres, not of Australia but of Basilaki Island, which goes to show that the Spaniards were pioneers in the area, so let's not pretend they never had the ability to notice this giant landmass called Australia. Now, his name looks Portuguese, but Galicia, which is in Spain, its spelling at the time was indistinguishable from Portuguese, Portugal having come from Galicia. And records never call Torres Portuguese, which is evidence he was just Galician, Spanish. According to Australia's government, this was the first European expedition to land on several islands which are now part of Australia. They may have sighted the Australian mainland, but if so, they probably concluded that it was another island. The first European contact with the mainland had occurred earlier, in the 1600s, when the Dutch ship Duifken, commanded by Willem Jans, or something like that, anchored in the Gulf of Carpentaria. Now, looking at the Luis Valles de Torres expedition around southern New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, and the Torres Strait between that landmass and Australia, Torres had discovered Australia without being aware of the fact. Here is the route of Torres, I think. Now this is not exact. The red is not exactly where they went, because in that island area, on top of that triangle of Australia, which I think is called Cape Horn, the Spaniards were exploring for a long time. According to the records of Torres, we could not go farther on for the many shoals and great currents, so we were obliged to sail out southwest in that depth to 11 degrees south latitude. There is all over it an archipelago of islands without number by which we passed, and at the end of the 11th degree the bank became shoulder. Here were very large islands, and there appeared more to the southward. They were inhabited by black people, very corpulent and naked. Their arms were lances, arrows, and clubs of stone ill-fashioned. We caught in all this land 20 persons of different nations, that with them we might be able to give a better account to your majesty. They give much notice of other people, although as yet they do not make themselves well understood. Footnote: these are the large islands near Cape York, according to George Collingridge, whoever that was. We went upon this bank for 2 months, at the end of which time we found ourselves in 25 fathoms, etc., etc. We went upon this bank for 2 months. Near Cape York. That's Cape York. The Spaniards were exploring there for 2 months. And you're telling me they never saw Australia? 2 months here. My people explored. They must have seen Australia. So the Spanish weren't the first to Australia, but they were there before the English, before the Scottish, before the Welsh, and before the Irish. Now look at how close South America is to Antarctica. God designed it so that South America would almost touch Antarctica. You'd have to be dumb to believe that Spaniards stopped southward exploration at the tip. Dios seguramente ha puesto ese continente cerca para que yo lo encuentre. According to this article on the Gabriel de Castilla base, it is a Spanish research station located on Deception Island in Antarctica, named after Gabriel de Castilla, a 1600s Spanish navigator, and according to some, the first person to sight the mainland of Antarctica, which is likely since look at the Spanish Empire right next to Antarctica. Gloria! Now, if you've ever seen how the world looks, thanks Iberians. This is so beautiful. If you live in America and your heart is not eaten by cannibals, thanks Spaniards. I look forward to see how you would justify the disgrace that the Spanish brought upon the natives of America and the subsequent death of their civilizations. Anti-Spaniards deserve their hearts ripped out for Huitzilopochtli. I plan to learn Nahuatl later, so I didn't pronounce that right. Haha, you liberal. You will justify the disgrace that the Spanish brought upon the innocent natives of America and the subsequent death of their civilizations. Brought upon the natives of America? What an insult to Native Americans for this liberal extremist to treat them as monolithic, as if they're all the same, as if they were united. The Spanish conquest was mostly a war of native versus native. According to Britain, Spain allied with many natives. We've come to save you, senor. Begone, evil Europeans! Can't you see I'm enjoying this pure native culture? You're so rude to crash into their feast of my blood. If you were British, I would treat you differently. My university told me you're villains. They are innocent. Aztecs are totally innocent blokes. Just misunderstood. Even a pig will shut up after this slain. Yes, we should set him ablaze. Oh, splendid! The warmth of Aztec hospitality! This creature is cursed! Very well then, my lord. I shall summon the demoness. Woo! Before moving on, I should backtrack to deal with some desperate arguments against my first video in the series. Alright, so someone accused me of changing definitions without exactly saying which definitions because they're cowards. I never changed the definition of most of Earth to include most of Earth, which is the waves the British sing about ruling, for crying out loud. So he's a liar. Your side is the one that moved the goalpost long ago, editing out most of Earth and calculating who ruled most of Earth. Hypocrites. And you're clinging to that proven to be a hypocritical standard is totally unjustified. Popularity is relevant to truth. Truth doesn't need anyone's recognition. Tradition is a shitty argument. You did ignore my arguments. I proved you're a hypocrite to count Australia entirely, but not the Pacific Ocean. And I add that Netherlands is to an extent swampland, so what percentage of land has to be land for it to count? Tell me exactly. What is the percentage of dry land exactly in a territory for it to count? According to the Wikipedia page Matic Lausum, in the Age of Discovery, the papacy helped legitimize and strengthen the claims of Iberians since the Pope prohibited others to navigate the seas under the Portuguese exclusive without permission of the King of Portugal, whose title included Lord of Commerce, Conquest, and Shipping of Arabia, Persia, and India. So he was the master of the waves. He ruled the seas. He owned the waves. The waves count. The liars said oceans are not part of empire claims by the empires themselves. Sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of this song. Rule Britannia, Britannia rule the waves. That is not a claim of the empire itself. Yes, it is. That is recognized by any other country. The people of the British sunk recognized it when they were sinking. Those so-called international rules, which were opinions, were established without even consulting most kingdoms of the world. You're greatly exaggerating the power of the Pope. You must be a Catholic, yes? The oceanic argument that was never made by Spain. It was. They called the Pacific Ocean the Spanish Lake. Tell me if the Romans owned the Mediterranean in their zenith. You've been running away from that argument in my part 1 ever since you got here. Also, look at the fact that Spanish ships did not, as a matter of course, interfere with the merchant ships of other nations as proof that they did not consider the seas to be their own. So they let the Turks pass into the Atlantic? Nope, they ruled the waves there. They let the English do piracy? Nope, they hunted them down. Sorry, I'm rushing, so I'm stuttering. Except for letting them escape, as explained in part 2. I'm trying to cover more fast. I have too much to cover. I'm only halfway done with this. Let me see here. You seem to be a Catholic who believes the Pope's supposed authority is the greatest argument. You keep refusing the obvious. Protestants don't care what popes say. Iberian mare clausum. Portugal's hemisphere, they ruled those waves, except during the Iberian Union when they were Spanish, and then the Pacific Ocean, the Spanish Lake. So your argument is the Pope says so, but the Pope says the seas belong to Iberians, which proves me right. Empires include waves. Maybe you're a Brit pretending to be on my side. Your argument is oceans have zero worth. Your argument is insane and willfully ignorant. If they do have worth, then you should count them, and of. But by land only is the way that's always been done. Your appeal to tradition is a fallacy called argumentum ad antiquitatem. You are irrational. Da 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 da. When Britain first at hell's command arose from its shitty country, arose from its gloomy skyland place. This was the charter of the land. And fallen angels sang this strain. Drool, Britannia, Britannia ruled less waves than Iberia. Britons are always mental slaves. Drool, Britannia, Britannia ruled less waves than Iberia. Britons are always mental slaves.